guys, my name is Brittany. I am the host of Kapella Industry Insights podcast with my co-host Kyle here. We have a very, very special guest. We have Tim Els. He is the project manager over at Kapella Investment Group. Tim, we appreciate you coming.
Yeah,
I just want to dive right into it, but I think what we want to start by asking is just a little bit about your background, kind of what you specialize in, how you got into the industry, and what you do here.
Yeah, sure. So about 7 years ago, I moved from Hawaii to Arizona, got involved in the multifamily industry. I ran a renovation crew. We renovated about 400 apartments for Kapella Investment Group. And then at the end of that contract, Kapella Investment Group hired me on as a project manager. So I take care of all their capital improvements, everything from asphalt, concrete, siding, roofs, renovation projects, everything in between. So anything capital improvement, I coordinate and take care of it. And we have right now we have 12 properties in northern Arizona that I take care of. Okay. And Kapella Investment Group just recently expanded into the Tucson, Sierra Vista, southern Arizona market too.
It's all just Arizona then?
Yeah, all Arizona, correct. Yeah.
Could you kind of go into a little bit more about just who Kapella Investment is, kind of the background, and what you guys really focus on?
Yeah, so Kapella Investment Group started by two ladies, Amy and Gina. They solely managed properties for one owner who had, so one primary owner who had a few, he has different investors in all these properties. But so we don't own the properties, but we manage them for one ownership group. Okay. So we're kind of exclusive in that way. They've owned some of these properties since the 80s. So where they're different to a lot of other companies that I've seen, like they're not coming in to buy a property, flip it, and sell it within 5 years and stuff. They invest time, they invest money, they manage it well. They're a great company to work for. They do things the right way. They have a big focus on their values and their virtues, and it starts from the top all the way down. They really push that through, growing and developing their employees. Right. And you see it in our properties. I can't tell you how many times I walk with inspectors and stuff, and they always comment on the quality of our properties. Mm-hmm. And it's because it comes from that leadership group. Right. It comes all the way through, and they don't take shortcuts. They do things the right way.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. Yeah, I love that. And why did you guys choose Arizona? I mean, just because it was work-based, or
honestly, I'm not sure why. I know that they were in California originally, right. And they moved into the Phoenix market, and eventually, I think as they were doing some philanthropic type stuff, they moved up to concentrate the area that they were working in, right? So they got out of the Phoenix market, and they just came to northern Arizona, and why they moved away from California, I'm not sure.
Yeah. So. Well, we're pretty excited that you guys are in Arizona, because like we were just talking about earlier, I mean, it's Kyle and I's first time here, and Kyle was able to get a bike in, go through like 4 lakes, or what did you go through?
Oh yeah, I had 4 river crossings this morning. So, and the rivers are running a little higher than normal probably right now, so there was some taking shoes and socks off and walking across an icy river. So.
Yeah, so I've done the loop you did this morning, and there normally aren't any rivers there.
Well, so I got a little off track and went, I don't remember the name of the trail, but when you get off of Dawa Trail, if you take a wrong, you go kind of down along the creek there. So,
yeah, right.
Yeah, but cold river crossing this morning. So when you think of Arizona, at least for us, we don't think of Arizona as cold and mountains. Yeah. I mean, it's like evergreen Colorado out here.
Right.
It really is.
So.
Yeah. I mean, because obviously we live in Colorado, and I was thinking, you know what, I'm going to see cactus everywhere. It's going to be 100 degrees, humid. And I remember, again, our conversation from like a year ago, you're like, people come here to ski. I'm like, are you sure? And now I'm seeing it. So it's pretty cool. But kind of the topic that I wanted to touch on, because I know that you guys specialize obviously in multifamily, but some of your properties, there's majority students in some of them.
Right.
So I guess I wanted to ask how you, just as far as the operation goes, with your properties that are mainly students versus the ones that are not, how do those, I guess, operate differently?
Yeah, so in Flagstaff, we have 8 properties up here, and,
Right.
and we call it the east and west side. Our east side properties away from the campus are, more regular apartment style, families, some elderly people, and a couple of those, there's a lot of young professionals that live there.
Okay.
Our west side properties, mostly student, and so operationally the way they're different, I mean, it's it comes from the lease terms. Like on the east side, we have people who have been in the units 5, 6, 7 years,
Right.
and they're staying there. Whereas generally at the student properties, they're, maybe a couple years and then they're moving on. And we rent out by the room. So like a 4-bedroom over here actually has 4 leases.
Wow. Okay.
And so, when it comes to something like a renovation thing, it's not just one lease expiration you have to meet that deadline on. You have to try to get all 4 out at the same time and then
wow.
lease it out again. So, although this property only has 240 units, it's really like 600-700
Yeah, you
leases that
break
we're
them
trying to manage, and trying to break up. So.
And that's just with the students, so that's not with
That's
like,
'cause
the
of the
families?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's all the students that now some of we do have some families that live on this property, and they just kind of like fall into the mix, but it is a big difference. It's not student housing per se, but it's definitely got a lot of elements of that student, a lot of the challenges, I should say.
Right.
One of the other things is like how often we're turning a unit, or how you're, the work that goes into it. Students can be kind of rough on apartments.
Do you ever like have their parents sign the lease instead to like kind of?
I think they do. I'm not that
Yeah.
involved in that part of it. I'm more on the everything on the construction side,
Yeah.
But I think that they do. They have to have like a parent sign as a. Not a co-signer, but like
Hey,
insurance,
you,
basically.
You messed this all up. This is coming
Right.
back on
Yeah.
mom and dad,
Exactly.
so don't mess it up.
Yeah.
So do you guys have more maintenance staff on the student
We do.
properties than you do
Yeah.
on just the normal?
Yeah. Partly because of their bigger communities too,
Right.
but also, even renovations aside, when summer comes around, 50 to 70% of the students leave, and they turn each of those rooms,
Yeah.
right? So they turn the common area and they turn the rooms, and that's a full paint. That's
Probably carpet most of the times.
Carpet
Yeah.
for sure, yeah. A lot of patching walls.
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff. So we probably have, I'd say maybe like 3 or 4 more maintenance techs.
Right. Okay.
On a property like this.
Yeah, and they're probably much busier. I feel like students don't necessarily treat things as nicely. I mean, you said that earlier, but like a family, and as you get older, you start to learn that even though this isn't mine, I shouldn't put holes in the walls or like.
But then again, if like parents are on, I think that would maybe cause the kids to have a little bit more respect. No, not really.
Not from what I've seen. Yeah.
Like, no, I still trash.
Just in the last week, I've walked a lot of apartments at this, and I was kind of having the same thought where I'm like, man, if my kid was here, I'd be doing spot checks all the time.
Yeah.
To make sure that this wasn't going on.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's just like the stage of life I think they're in. They're partying,
Yeah.
they're a cottage, and
Yeah.
they're not necessarily
Living their best life.
maintaining a home. They're just, it's a place where they sleep at night.
Yeah.
And so they come home and then they go to school.
Yeah.
So
That makes
Are they
sense.
furnished units as well?
these are.
So
this property.
what does that look like? Replacing furniture? Is that just part of your
Yeah, we have that in the
annual
budget every
Yeah.
year. Yeah.
Reminds me of like
just
little
kind of go through.
Airbnbs.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. So we change out furniture. They do unit inspections every year, and then they'll kind of mark and see what's damaged, what's not, and then just kind of replace it as they go. So
Yeah. And does like safety deposits, do those help you guys out much, or usually the cost to repair is always going to be higher than a safety deposit at the start?
again, I'm not that involved on like
Okay.
the leasing side over here, like
Yeah.
And you're like, thank God.
But I know what it costs to fix everything, so I can't imagine that it covers everything.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
and some of the apartments, I mean, there's a lot that are good, you know. It's always the bad ones that kind of stick out in your mind.
Right. What is the worst one that you've ever seen?
Well, it's hard to say because like the worst one I've ever seen wasn't at a student property. It was at a regular place, you know, a hoarding situation where that's really mental illness, right?
Yeah.
So like, you know, but I could tell you some horror stories about that, you know. But sometimes, you know, elderly people die, and you only find them a few weeks later and stuff. So it's really hard to say. As far as student stuff, I mean, sometimes I think there's more people living in there than they say. And those situations, it's just the amount of people that they'll have in there, you know. But our property, the staff, the site crew, the maintenance and the leasing, they're pretty good about like keeping on top of stuff like that.
Yeah.
And if they see stuff like that, they'll address it. And again, those inspections as they go through, every time a new person goes in, they get to see the whole apartment, right? And so that they'll correct it, you know. I've been walking properties this week and made some notes and passed it along, and I know the property managers already addressed some of that. So yeah.
So were you guys, I mean, go to college? Did you stay in dorms? Did you experience that?
Well, so I went to University of Colorado, and my first year, all freshmen are required to stay in a dorm for 1 year. And so that's all like campus-owned student housing. Sophomore year, you can stay in the dorm, but that's not what you want to do. So there's similar situations with apartments spread out all over Boulder. And same with, I think leasing was a similar setup where I was in a 4-bedroom for the 3 years after my freshman year. And I think everyone had separate leases as well. But yeah, we were in a 4-bedroom and it got beat up. I mean, and when you're in a place for 3 years, I mean, it happens, but we weren't like throwing parties or intentionally destroying stuff, but sometimes you have friends over and things get rowdy and someone falls into a wall and now there's a hole in your drywall. And I mean, we did our best to tell maintenance, and maintenance was always very good about picking that stuff up, but yeah, they just get beat up. And when you're using like builder grade carpet and stuff like that, there's only so much it can take. So
Right.
yeah.
That's fun.
How about you?
Yeah, I didn't go to college. You know, no, I jumped right into the workforce.
Yeah.
I owned a couple businesses and stuff, so I didn't. But it's interesting to hear from the other side of things and how people did it. Because I obviously have friends that went to college and stuff, and I hear a lot of different stories. Some that are partiers and they go crazy, and then others that are, you know, I put my head down and I worked and treated it with respect. So.
Yeah, and you can see that on our properties. I mean, you know, there's some apartments where you go in and you're like, man, these people are like, you just want them to stay forever, right?
Angel ones.
It's like, you know, and they're in their room busy studying when you get there, and you know, it looks great and everything, and then others, they're waking up at like 2:00 in the afternoon. It's like, oh, you know, different approaches to that stage of your life. I guess. So, but I mean, you know, that students are hard on properties, but so are people with young families, right? I have a young family, and I can tell you my kids aren't, you know, they cause their fair share of damage. But I think the difference is that like young families will fix the problem, get maintenance involved if they need to, or like me, I'll put a wall patch on the wall and get some paint and paint, and you know, get it fixed up. Whereas students tend to just kind of let things go until they have to deal with it.
Right. Yeah. So when they're a week out from closing their lease and they're like, oh my gosh, that hole is still there. Trying to put a poster over it.
Plenty posters.
I've done that once or twice. I did do that. But I was young when I did that. Okay, so kind of moving forward, I want to ask, what was the life cycle, or what is the life cycle of your units, and when do you choose to renovate, and how often do you do that?
Yeah, so like I say, student housing, the student properties, we turn the units every year, just about. That's like a full paint and repairs. As far as full renovations, where we'd come and replace cabinets, countertops, all that kind of stuff, the properties that we manage right now, we've done 4 of them, and I believe those were the first renovations they had done.
Wow.
So, you know, some of them built in the 90s, 80s. Again, I think Bella does a really good job about maintaining and keeping everything up to standard.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. They're not
There
falling
are
apart.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they would never like let it get that bad.
Yeah.
And then there's obviously been units where they've had a renovation done, but it's not a full renovation of the property, right?
Sure.
You've had to do a more extensive turn
Sure.
in some of the units. As far as like our student properties, we're only just getting into those renovations right now, and typically what a renovation looks like for us is we do 10, 12 a month, and it goes year round, which in Flagstaff with all the snow has its challenges,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like winter months, you might only be getting 7 of them in a month. In the summertime, we can get a little more. But with the student property, you know, we get that vacancy May, June, July,
Mm-hmm.
where we could try to turn 75 units in those 3 months.
That's wild.
And which is a challenge we're just kind of going through now. So
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to learn and take on the bull by the horns, you know.
That's
all you can
It's
do.
very different to what we've done in the past. So I think we've got a good plan in action, but it's different, you know. Again, managing all those lease expirations, getting them all out, and then there's that hard cutoff time where you have to have them done. So.
Because I mean, if you don't get it done on time,
Yeah.
right, then it's like you have to go a whole nother school year or whatever
Yeah.
before you can.
Exactly.
And that's a lot of money that can go out if
Yeah.
you don't hit that.
So yeah, the vacancy loss is huge because once the students come into town, if they don't have that, you know, by the time school starts, they've found a place to stay. So
Right.
if your place isn't ready, they find somewhere else, and then
Yeah.
you won't rent it out.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think I was telling you on maybe the drive over here, the place that I stayed in college, I had signed a lease. I mean, you're signing the lease pretty much as your spring semester is wrapping up, so you have the summer in between. And so I had signed for my fall semester, and they're like, it was brand new construction. They're like, oh yeah, we'll be done in time.
Yeah.
So you start getting closer to the date, you go back for just to check in, get your books, all that, typically a week or 2 before. And then we got there and it was like, this is still a construction site.
yeah.
So the day we were supposed to start our lease, we get a letter in the mail that says, you guys are staying in a hotel until we're done. So we were in a hotel for 4 weeks, and I mean, the property owner is paying to put all these kids up in hotels, and I mean that's expensive. That hurts when that happens.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
You got the cost of the hotel, but you're also not getting in the
exactly, yeah, you're not making money, you're losing money.
and you're building or renovating, so it's
Yeah.
very costly. Yeah. So how does Kapella or Global Construction? How do you guys, when you have those big deadlines coming up, the properties in that situation, and you fall behind schedule, like?
Yeah, I mean, what happens. It has happened more with COVID and our suppliers really struggling to give us set dates for materials. That's been crushing on us. For the most part, we try to plan upfront so that doesn't happen. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, it does happen, and when it does happen, it's really just our policy to communicate as best we can and
Right.
do our best to mitigate the problem, maybe increase the number of guys working on that project to speed things along.
Right.
But I mean, like I said, with suppliers and stuff, we've had issues like with windows and stuff where you order them and they're like, oh yeah, they'll be there in 6 weeks. And then at 6 weeks you're calling them and they're like, oh, we're actually 4 weeks out. It's like,
Yeah.
Right. We
don't have any control over that. So
We either bring in more crews because we have traveling crews or people
Yeah.
that we hire locally, but then we also we've had an incident where some of our material didn't come in time, and so the tenant moved in, even though the unit wasn't completely finished.
Sure.
But they were able, allow us to come in there and finish what we need to do. It's just minor
Yeah,
things.
right.
Obviously, that's not ideal. But
Yeah.
you work with what you can, and it does sometimes come down to if our suppliers don't get us what we need. And it's certain things like the cabinets or little things like that. Communication is definitely on the forefront, but then also making sure that we always try to have 2 or 3 backup plans as far as, our vendors, our subs, everybody.
Right.
Because you never know what might happen, right? So if you have a backup plan and then a backup plan to that backup plan, there's something to fall on, because usually with construction, something's going to happen.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, I can tell you from our side, from the management side, that communication is what makes all the difference with the company, right? Like, because we've seen it before where there's a problem and they're like trying to fix it, and then they give you a week. Oh, yeah, we're 4 weeks out now.
Yeah.
Well, it's not just like, okay, well, we'll change the date.
Right.
You have tenants moving in, at a student property. Their parents have taken time off work. They've got a moving truck. They've got and there's all these different pieces.
Right.
I found that what's always helped us the most is when you see that problem 4 weeks out, just say something right then.
Yes.
You communicate it then, because that, you'll try to still meet that deadline, but at least everybody knows ahead of time, the tenant, the end user.
Yeah.
It's like our company's like the best way we like to describe it is like we're like a wheel. So we're all connected to each other. All the way from, marketing, business development, our superintendents, our project managers, everybody, our estimate, everybody. So it's like at whatever stage we're in, if we see that there's a problem, there needs to be clear communication so we can work together as a team to figure out, okay, what's the next best move? Because like you said, telling me a week out isn't going to do anything, but if we can catch it ahead of time, then we communicate internally, figuring out, okay, what is our game plan? That way when we do go to our client, we're not saying, oh, well, I don't know. Well, no, we've already discussed it. We've come out with some action plans, and then we're able to be like, okay, here's the plan.
Yeah.
And that way we have a little bit more confidence, too, in facing those issues when they do come.
And I think a lot of times, including the client in that conversation, right? They can come up with some pretty good ideas where
absolutely.
they can say something like, oh, you haven't got your appliances in. Well, we still have the old appliances.
Right.
We'll just put those and then we'll do a switch out, right?
Yeah.
Or, I know we've many times helped the person working for us. It's a give and take, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and on properties out of state, like Arizona specifically in the past, when we're doing like 100 units over however many months, we like to order up front for everything, like all 100 units, and we'll just pay for storage and have a storage container with all of like doorknobs and cabinet hardware and all that stuff that can just sit in a storage container there, and that way when it's needed we can have it, versus, well, we've finished these 10 units, it's time to start thinking about these. Instead we're thinking about the whole project instead of the chunks. So
How did COVID affect companies like us, their decisions to move forward on big projects? Did you guys see were people kind of like hesitant and holding back, or?
I've been seeing that a lot of people not wanting to move forward with, upgrades, renovations, a lot more of buy and hold. We've definitely seen a lot more of that.
Yeah.
Just a lot more reservation. A lot of investors are a little bit more weary.
Yeah.
That's what I've seen a lot of.
Yeah, and we were working with a lot of flippers versus buy and hold, especially in our area. I mean, Denver and the Springs and all of that is like growing like crazy, so people are just trying to cash in on it. And I think one of the bigger challenges we saw was giving a bid in quarter one, but not starting a project until quarter 3 or 4, and prices were so volatile that like the bid was just no longer accurate. Like 10 to 15% difference in just like kit pricing. So that was brutal.
But I mean, you have to pivot, and I think that with COVID, I don't think anybody saw it coming. So we all had to pivot and figure out what to do and how to problem solve. And I think that's where you got to have a lot of grit. That's what I saw. A lot of people with grit, like, you just got to dig your heel in and figure it out. That's what I found on both sides, the construction side, but then also on the property management side, the ownership side. I think that's what everybody what it came down to.
Right.
What about you, though? I mean, how did it really affect you?
Yeah, definitely, because we've been looking at doing 2 big renovations now for about 3 years, and there were those reservations from the ownership. We were at contract, day of signing on one of the years and then we pulled out, you know.
Yeah.
Which is tough for the people in my position and for the people like you who put all the work into it, right? But you know, when I think back, those investors are a lot smarter than me, and they saw things coming that I didn't, you know. And even when companies said, no, we'll be okay, supply is not going to be an issue, towards the end there were issues, you know, and so they almost operate on a different level, at least to me. So you know, learn to trust them, and they make wise decisions.
Right.
So
they're trying to think ahead. They're not trying to think the short game and say, okay, well, let's look 10 steps ahead and see where it's going to go.
Yeah.
So, I mean, one of my last questions here was, you know, how do you strategize between, you know, having to meet strict deadlines? But we kind of went into that a little bit, and how you guys plan ahead. Is there anything else that you might want to touch on that?
What I found key is like just having, I think that both parties have to be really involved in the renovation. Like, you could hire a company like yourselves who are very capable in everything and just say, yeah, give me my unit back when it's done. But I've really found that, like, with us being very involved in the process too, that's gone a lot smoother. Because there is, like you said, things will always come up, and if we can just have that like honest communication, we know that there's a bit of give and take. We tend to always figure it out, you know. But
I think that's the biggest part, is the relationship piece, and it's not just, at least for us, it's not just like, yes, we want to be able to take your guys' vision and say, okay, you know, and trust us with your vision so we can put it together for you. But personally, I also do feel getting you guys involved in the problem solving. We want to come to you with solutions, but we want to involve you with that as well. It's like, hey, because you're right, like you said earlier, more minds are better than one. And so if we bring you guys in, you guys are going to see from a different point of view, or you might have some other solutions that we didn't think of, or the communication piece is critical, especially in the relationship of that, and making sure it does run smoothly.
Right.
Yeah, I think involving as many people as possible too. Like Holly Creek, the project we just completed, that senior living, there were so many people involved in that because it's a senior living, so the renovation is for that person because they're going to be staying there quite a while. And so we're not only working with like property owner, we're working with executive director, we're working with leasing people, we're working with the actual client, and sharing like all the different options that they can select from to have exactly what everyone wants along the way. It's not just here's plans, kick it out. Like the back and forth is going to help in the entire process. I mean, a lot of times you guys will work with a designer and they'll send you, but a designer isn't necessarily building the units every day. They're not pricing kits every day. And so we're working with that all the time, and we can kind of value engineer a little more and give feedback on, oh, do we really need this $175 kitchen faucet when we have an $85 one that looks and functions pretty much the same? Because I mean, especially with like students living in your properties, it's like, why put that nice expensive one in when it may need to be replaced in 2 or 3 years anyways? So. And a designer may not think like that. They're thinking about how to make it look nice and function. So
yeah, I really think like that communication thing, just to go back to that, when you don't involve all those players, like you said, as soon as something goes wrong, everybody just starts pointing fingers, right?
Yes.
Well, this person didn't do it, you know. But when everybody's in, and it's like, it feels more like a team.
Yeah.
You know, it's a team that encompasses all the different companies, all the different parties. You're more inclined to look for solutions as opposed to pointing fingers.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
And you know, I know that when I was on the ground doing the work with the crew, the only difference between myself and the previous project manager was like I just made a relationship with the property manager. Checked in every day. How's your dog doing? You know, all that kind of like little chit chat. Anytime I needed something, hey, there's a problem. We're 3 weeks out now. Oh, not a problem. We'll figure it out. You know. Whereas before it was kind of like, well, figure it out. So yeah. So
what's your favorite part of your job, your position? What do you love the most?
I like problem solving.
Yeah?
Yeah, there's always problems that come up. I really like to be involved in that. Thinking outside the box, like coming up with solutions, making people happy.
Yeah.
I'd say problem solving and helping people. Those are like my two things I get fulfillment out of, So,
It's like you-
and this job provides plenty of opportunity for that.
Oh yeah, lots of problem
Sure.
solving, lots of people.
Yeah.
I feel like that's because it's like, yes, it's business, it's where everybody's winning, but at the end of the day, you're working with other human beings, and it's like
Right.
a lot of different personalities, a lot of temperaments, a lot of quirks and everything, and I think that's in itself can be
Yeah.
rewarding working with different types of people,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
And the different types of people, from like guys on the construction crew,
That's weird.
go
Yeah.
hang out with them, all the way up to like property
Very
managers,
different.
to investors, all
Yeah.
different walks of life. And if you can, speak into each of them and bring joy to all of them.
Yes.
A lot of times I'll be like talking to guys on the crew, and they're kind of like, "Why are you talking to me?" Like they're
Mm-hmm.
expecting that I'm only going to be talking to the upper levels, and it's like, no, I'm interested in you.
Yep,
Tell me about
I love
you.
that.
Yeah.
I
So
love that.
I enjoy that part of it too.
Treat everybody the same,
Yeah.
with respect,
exactly.
and
Yeah.
so everybody matters. So I want to ask you a couple questions, totally
Yeah.
off topic here.
Yeah.
So, what is your favorite sports memory or moment in sports history?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm from South Africa. Our big sport is rugby, right? Have you seen the movie Invictus?
No.
With Matt Damon?
It's been a little
yeah,
bit,
yeah.
but yeah.
So
I have to
that
watch
was
it now.
it was a movie about the Rugby World Cup in 1995, and it ties in the political aspects of what was happening in the country, like the end of apartheid and everything.
Okay.
But so I was 12, 13 years old. South Africa won the World Cup, and they hosted the World Cup that year.
Oh.
So for a kid my age, that was just like, it was incredible, like.
Yeah.
I get goosebumps thinking about it. And then 4 years ago, 2019, South Africa wanted a game. They've won it other times too, but now my son, he was 13 at the time.
Nice.
And so to see him watching it and going through all the stuff that I kind of went through.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, it was-
Wow.
Yeah, so those World Cup wins are,
Yeah.
those are the things.
Do you
we're
still
for.
play a little bit?
I'll play like once a year in like a social side,
Okay,
like
okay.
tennis tournament. I coach the boys' teams, and my boys play, so
I bet that
still
feels good
pretty
then,
involved with it. Yeah.
to watch him kind of follow
Yeah,
in that.
oh yeah, seeing them growing and moving up and playing, and it's super fun. So
That's awesome.
yeah,
It's like a life goal. I got two nephews. One's into he does wrestling. He's so
Mm.
cute. I definitely want my kids to be in sports, probably fighting of some sort.
yeah.
What about you, Kyle?
Oh, sports memory. I'm gonna have to come up with different ones every podcast, huh?
Or just even like a sport that you like, something you like to do, a fun memory.
I'm gonna go with a little off topic, but in line with kind of South African alternative sports that Americans don't think a lot about. But I have been staying up and watching the Cricket World Cup.
Oh, really?
And
Yeah.
getting really into cricket lately. So that's been fun. I watched who was it? It was India and Australia the other
Okay.
day played, and then New Zealand and England. So yeah, it's been kind of hard to learn after growing up with like baseball.
Right.
It's
little bit different,
similar
yeah.
but a little different. But yeah, I really like
Okay.
cricket right now.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the last 10 minutes of a cricket game are like.
That's what it's
super
all about.
exciting.
Intense.
Yeah, yeah, it's
The first 8 hours, not so much.
yeah. I know. I mean, depending
like
on
hockey.
what style of cricket you're
Right,
watching, because
yes.
I mean the World Cup is all Test cricket, so it goes for like actual days.
Yeah.
Like they stop for like lunch and tea and all that. It's
Right.
Wow.
it's
Yeah, and then there's 5-day games.
yeah.
Which both teams wear all white. It's the most. My grandparents would sit and watch that 5 days of cricket, and it's like watching the grass grow.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one day and the World Cup stuff. That's exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I don't think I have like a favorite one in history. I just have to say I've been watching Rocky lately. I don't know. That's all I got.
Yeah.
I've been watching. I don't know. I really enjoy fighting and watching it, and
I had my kids watch Rudy a couple.
Yeah.
You know, couple of weeks ago.
That is such
Great,
a
great.
powerful movie.
Yeah.
Have you
You're
seen
not a
it?
fan?
You know my take. I told you my take on
Yeah.
most of those movies.
Okay, well, it's a good. I thought it was a powerful
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
I liked it.
Yeah. Did you watch Rocky 4 last night?
I sure did.
Yeah.
I sure did. It was good. Okay, so last question, I guess, kind of relates to construction, but what is your favorite power tool to use? And it doesn't have to be a power tool, like it's just a
Yeah.
construction tool.
Yeah. So from the days when I was hanging cabinets and stuff, the one tool I was always hesitant to buy was a multi-tool. You know, it's got all the different heads.
You were
like a
hesitant
job
to
mag.
buy?
Yeah. Like I was like, I don't need that. Like I can get by without it.
Oh,
and then I
life-changing
bought it.
tool.
Oh man, it was like game changer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
cabinets,
Yeah.
baseboards,
Oh,
door
yeah.
trim, all of it.
They're
Yeah.
amazing.
So good. Yeah. So that's definitely still my favorite tool.
You do it.
Yeah.
What's your tool today?
I'm gonna have to say the wet saw, man. For cutting
The tile saw?
It's so soothing just to watch it go through and just it cuts so perfectly. I just don't think there's anything better.
Yeah.
What about you?
Man, I think I have two right now. I'm gonna get judged for this. So I miss having access to a bandsaw. We had an old bandsaw in the theater shop that it used to be used to like cut cows. It was like in a butcher shop, and it was incredible. It just cut like butter. And I had to do what a bandsaw does with a table saw the other day, cutting. This is where I'm going to get judged. I cut a 2x6 in half, like longwise through the table saw. So super dangerous,
Yeah.
not fun. And I was like, man, a bandsaw would have just done that in 2 seconds.
Right.
But the other one is I just bought myself a grinder, like an angle grinder, and that was a lot of fun to use. So, yeah, I'm getting more into metal stuff, metalworking. So it was woodworker by nature, and now that I'm working on my truck, it's time
Nice.
for metalworking, and
Yeah.
potentially going to get a welder here soon and
Yeah.
start learning how to do that. So,
Done a little bit of welding. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Kind of suck at it, but you know, eventually.
My dad's a welder, and my
Oh,
whole
really?
childhood was like, hold this. Like,
Yes.
It's so right.
That's my dad.
Close your eyes, okay?
What's that smell?
My dad works on cars, so that'd be me. Like, okay, hand me this tool, and then he'd get mad that I don't know which tool.
Just hold the flashlight.
Hold this up.
Yeah.
Good times.
I think that's like the most stressful thing for any kid is hold the flashlight. Because you never hold it
Yes.
right.
You never do it right. Like,
And
you
then-
angle it this way.
Yeah. And then now my son like says stuff like that. I'm like, oh wait, I'm doing that too. But then I'm like, well, I can't see.
It just follows down the line. That's amazing. Well, Tim, I mean, unless you had anything else that you'd like to add, I mean, that you answered a lot of our questions. You gave us a lot of insight. This was a lot of fun. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, thanks for the opportunity to chat with you guys. It was fun for sure.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we
yeah.
appreciate you coming on here and spending some time with us, allowing us to come over here and.
Yeah, letting us use your set this time. 'Cause,
Yeah, we're.
our hotel didn't have quite the set.
Our hotel did not have much at all. So we're happy not to be
Much
here.
of anything.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Happy to be here, but thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys. It's been a pleasure.